Welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Allison and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals. Today we're at the International Cybersecurity Expo at Olympia, London, and we're joined by Tim. Tim, could you give us a high-level overview of who you are and what we're looking at discussing?
My name's Tim Ward. I'm CEO, co-founder of Red Flags, previously known as Think Cyber. So we're all about applying behavioural science to security awareness and really tackling the human aspect of cybersecurity.
So Tim, let's talk a little bit about ICE for the first end. In terms of events, such as ICE, what do you think makes ICE stand out against other such events? And from your own perspective, why are you here and what are you looking to get from ICE ultimately?
So we're here both to meet our existing customers who kind of know where to find us, but also to make some new relationships. We love having an opportunity to speak on the stage, say something a bit different, and that draws people over to our stand. We're also here to kind of make a point and poke our finger at everyone else whose stand is full of stuff that should go in landfill, and our stuff is all completely recyclable. We've got plants all over the stand, and the stand's made of cardboard. So we kind of wanted to make a bit of a statement about that as well, because these events can be a bit of a drain on the environment, I think.
100%. Let's talk a little bit about the industry itself. If there was something about the industry that you could maybe pin down and fix in an ideal situation that is fixable, what would that be?
I think it would be the obsession with tech. And I understand where it comes from, because cyber kind of grew out of the world of IT, possibly quite male dominated, so it's all about tech and boxes and stuff that you can play with and buttons to press. But actually we know that a lot of the problems are, or not problems, but the attacks come through the human. And so more budget needs to go on dealing with the human side of things, or more attention needs to go on that, and realising that you can throw a lot of tech at it, but you're not going to solve the whole problem if you don't include thinking about the human.
And it's something we've been asking people all day. What's easier to secure, humans or the tech?
I think the tech, you can always lock things down. What was it, the Dilbert comic, where like the security awareness paper just said stare into the sun, that was their solution, or gave people an Etch a Sketch. So I think if you just turn off the tech, you're hyper secure. So yeah, you can lock things down, but as you start to open them up, which you have to because you want people to be creative and to be able to use tools, then the human needs to know what they're doing. They need to be the kind of the final layer to go, oh, that doesn't quite look right, or something like that. So I think it's much harder to secure the human. And I think the industry's been getting this wrong. We've taken an approach that we are used to as a way of learning things, like e-learning and videos. That's great if I choose to learn something because I want to learn about something. It doesn't work if I want to force you to learn something because I need you to be more secure. So we need to think about it differently.
That makes sense. And you engage with a lot of other senior leaders in the security space as well as end users. What were some of the biggest frustrations you're seeing across industry, and perhaps some of the biggest challenges, and what are you doing as an organisation to address those?
So I think the challenges to some degree depend on the organisation. So we're all about trying to help people understand applying a behavioural lens to their risk register. So if they're looking at the problems in their organisation, where does the human come into that, and what are the behaviours I want to change, and how am I going to measure that? And I think increasingly we are interested in measurement, like the CISO wants to prove he's got return on investment, and measures like have people done their training are not a useful measure. We need measures like, am I changing behaviour, am I reducing this operational risk? And so that's one of the challenges we're trying to help people with. How do you measure how many people are trying to upload files to a location? How do you measure how many people are leaving their screen unlocked? And can you measure that you've changed that and had an impact on it?
I appreciate you sharing, and appreciate you can't disclose anything confidential, but have there been any mistakes over the last 12 months or cyber F-ups that you want to highlight? And if so, what were the lessons learned? May not be something that you've made a mistake personally on, but
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think we know that anyone can accidentally click on a link. A founder of another awareness company, I think, honestly came out on LinkedIn the other day and said he had. I mean, that's because he doesn't use our tool, so maybe I don't. No, anyone can make a mistake. Ian Levy, who used to be the senior tech guy at the NCSC, admitted to be taken a certain way along a ride by a social engineer. And I think that just makes that point again, that anyone can fall for stuff. And so it's not about expertise and saying, oh, I know everything about cyber, therefore I won't make a mistake. It's about understanding how people's brains work, which means we could all make a mistake unless perhaps our IT can help us a bit. It can kind of prime us, or it can intervene or nudge us or something. So we are all open to making mistakes.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people are human, show the vulnerability, and encourage people to own up to those mistakes, for instance. And I don't see those mistakes as opportunities, isn't it?
I think that's really important, because I think there are organisations where there isn't that degree of psychological safety, and I think phishing sims don't help with this, because it creates a kind of, we're trying to trick and catch you out. And in some organisations, if you get that 1-3 times, you might get sacked. Now that means you're creating a culture where people are a little bit nervous to say, I have clicked on this thing. Because actually security need to know, because the quicker they know, the quicker they can do something about it. But if you're scared and you brush it under the carpet, then that's not where we want to be. So that openness to, yes, we all make mistakes, let's be honest and tell people as quick as possible, is where we need to be.
And when you're addressing boards, for instance, some of your customers and clients, is there a go-to analogy that you use to sort of simplify the complex terms and communicate risk, for instance, to boards?
I mean, I think when we talk to boards, our focus is on sort of helping them understand that we want to scale up their awareness function to almost allow the CISO to be there to tap anyone on the shoulder and say, you sure you want to do that? But really at board level, they're interested in organisational impact, aren't they? Am I actually reducing my risk, and am I spending the right amount of money in the right place to do so? So that's our focus. How do we show them they've got a return on investment? How do we make it measurable?
What do you think your legacy will be, Tim, in maybe 10 years from now, and whatever goes on in the industry, in the sector, and of course with red flags in that time? What do you think when you look back at what you've done with Inside? What do you think your legacy, and maybe the business's legacy, will be?
That's a great question, and I think our vision for a couple of years has been to kind of, for red flags, or the way we do it with red flags, to be seen as the way to change this and change behaviour. And we are definitely seeing a shift in the industry to talking about nudge theory and interventions and stuff, which is really flattering because everyone's talking about it. It's a bit frustrating because lots of little fibbers say that they nudge and they don't really nudge. But that, I suppose that would be our legacy, to say, look, there is a behavioural lens we should be applying to this, and let's get people thinking about the human factor, not just the tech that can block things and stop things. Because my view is, it doesn't matter how a tech escalates, like, you're never going to solve some of these problems, because the tech will just, the bad guys' tech will get better too.
Always.
And so the humans are always going to be somewhere in there, able to kind of be the route through, in my opinion.
And it's an interesting time. Look, we've been through a relatively choppy couple of years in tech and cyber by proxy, and underinvestment as well. It speaks for itself with the amount of breaches that are going on out there at the moment across all types of organisations. We're going to see the markets return to a more bullish form probably going into 2026, and hopefully that will mean more opportunities for people. And we know that diverse workforce is now become not just let's talk about it, in an event, but actually being implemented, hopefully anyway, and should be recognised more. How do you think, making cyber more accessible for people from your own perspective should be implemented?
It's an interesting question. I think we're lucky enough to be in a bit in the industry where certainly the gender balance is much better. I think it's a bit of a stereotype, but I do believe women are much better communicators than men generally, and so there are much more women in the awareness side and the culture and the change sides of cyber, and I think that's a really good thing. And I think and it creates opportunities for people to come in so people who have been marketeers in their background come into cyber as the communication voice and stuff. So I think that's really a real positive. And I suppose the more we start thinking about the human side and less about tech, then maybe that will make a shift to the industry. But yeah, I think that's probably a good starting point.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. Now, tell us a bit more about Nudge. For some of the audience, they don't really understand what it is, and as you mentioned, there are new vendors saying that they're actually doing it, but they're not. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So nudge theory at its heart is about helping to guide people to make decisions that are essentially in their best interest. And they had this concept of them being parentalistic nudges. They did call them paternalistic, but we're changing that. Parentalistic is much more diverse way of reflecting it. And so it's about not forcing you to do something, but kind of shaping your environment to say, actually, this is the best thing for you to do, and it's in all our interests. And so what we've tried to do that is layer that onto the world of security. And to do that, you need to be helping people in the context where the threat lies. So you're just, as they're about to do something on your laptop, you're gently steering them. You're not necessarily forcing them, but you're highlighting the risk and letting them make the decision. And by doing that, A, you can prevent it, but B, you leave them feeling empowered to get it right themselves next time, because you haven't done it for them, you've let them do it. So that's the essence of nudge. I think sometimes people just confuse a nudge for a reminder, or if they tell you afterwards. In my opinion, that's not a nudge, because nudging is shaping the decision you're about to make. It's not telling you off afterwards for making a decision. So that's the kind of subtlety that I'm interested in. And I think it does matter, because after a while, if you're just being nagged after the fact, you just get a bit fed up with it, frankly.
And I appreciate you can't disclose anything confidential on the nudge theory side of things. What does success look like for organisations that have implemented that? And tell us a bit more about your other solutions.
Yeah, so red flags, because we can nudge at these points of risk, we can also just silently measure, did that thing happen? And so what we start to give our clients is this telemetry on, well, how often are people visiting ChatGPT? How often are they trying to upload a file to Dropbox? How often are they clicking a link and then starting to enter their credentials? And if you can baseline that, then we'll run a campaign to try and steer away from that behaviour, and then you can get some great stats like a 73% reduction in people clicking links from people they don't know. And so that's a really strong measure of real change in the organisation. It's not like a simulation, it's real impact. So we tend to do that working with our clients to focus on, well, what's the behaviour you're worried about? Is it file uploads? Is it cyber hygiene? Or is it link clicks and things like that? And then give them those behaviour change campaigns that align with their risk profile.
I appreciate you sharing, and I know how passionate you are about the industry. I've seen you speak so many times, and some of your peers speak really highly of you, so we do appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And in terms of the audience that are sort of tuning in, who's your ideal sort of client, customer?
So interestingly, like we've been quite hands-on, and so we have been tending to work with some of the bigger organisations who have a mature team who's focused on human factors and the culture side of things. But actually, we feel now that we can sort of democratise is slightly cheesy way of saying it, but like make that open to much smaller organisations. So we have a self-service mechanism now that means that actually any organisation could start to use our approach to human risk management at a sensible price level, the same as using traditional e-learning tools. That's taken a while to build, because we've had to kind of take away the hands-on bit that we did and make it so it's more automated. But I think that's a really exciting thing for us, to allow any organisation, however big or however small, to do it for themselves. So we're seeing it as a kind of almost augmented human risk management, and that's the direction things are going in.
Oh, that's fascinating. And for those that are looking to enter the industry, they may be graduates, it may be even individuals that are looking to cross-train and redeploy from other areas of the business, those with the ability to listen, learn and communicate effectively, for instance. Are there any career pathways within cyber that you would recommend, and if so, what are the pros and cons of those career pathways?
Crikey, that's an interesting question, because we, as a cyber organisation, you don't necessarily have, not all your staff are cyber people, and so we get people all the time saying, I've got a cybersecurity degree, can I work for you? And we don't actually have that many jobs. I mean, we have experts in certain areas, but then we have normal or corporate people like salespeople, marketing people and things like that. So I think if you're coming from another organisation but you have an interest, then you can stay in your kind of interest area. So if you're in marketing but you want to get into cyber, then you start doing marketing in the world of cyber, and then slowly you will start to learn more and more about cyber, and then maybe you can transition through that route to being someone who's helping communicate about cyber, stuff like that. I think that's a way in, I think. It's very common for people to sort of just want to come straight through the SOC analyst or pen tester route, which isn't something I'm particularly well versed in, but I think is proving a hard route because there's a lot of competition there.
And what would you say the 2 or 3 pros and 2 or 3 cons of working in cybersecurity are?
I mean, it's cheesy to say it's a hot industry, but I think it is. I mean, like, it's not going away, and obviously it's becoming more and more topical. My dad's always kind of sending me news articles saying, is this good for business? I'm like, well, it is, but it's a bit sad that it's happened. Yeah, exactly.
Random links and various things that you think, well, lovely.
Yeah.
Nice that the people
Have you
are
seen
thinking of
that?
us.
And Dad, why are you reading that paper? But yeah, I've forgotten the question now. Pros and cons. So I think, it's an industry that's thriving and it's full of change, I think. But I think depending on what you're doing in it, like the CISO's job is a pretty thankless task. So I think there are areas in it that are very, very stressful, and there's a real burnout risk. So I think there's a balance. It's exciting, but that excitement can get a bit too much sometimes.
Well, look, Tim, it's been fascinating, and certainly we'd like to continue the dialogue with you in more future discussions. As we talked about a little bit before the episode, I think where we see things going really now is more panel discussions and live events, and we'd love to have you back to talk a little bit more about yourself and, of course, red flags, and really kind of introduce you to other people within our network to maybe talk about various topics going forward. So, as far as the live podcast today, we'd like to say thank you, and we look forward to further engagement going forward.
It's been great. Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Welcome to the Secure CyberConnect podcast live. Today we're thrilled to be joined by the legendary Lisa Ventura. Lisa, we're going to talk to you a little bit today on a quick snapshot podcast and talk to you a little bit about, I guess, some of the pain points within the cyber sector.
Yeah.
What do you see as the number one challenge within cyber now, and where do you see some of the challenges in stopping us from addressing it?
Okay. So for me, I'm seeing a lot with regard to AI, and there's a lot of businesses, a lot of organisations that are wanting to jump on the bandwagon of AI because they feel they need to have it. Everybody else is doing it, and they're like, we've got to have AI, we've got to have these systems, and we say, well, what exactly are they doing? Well, we don't know, but we just need it anyway. So there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of adoption in terms of people using all these learning language models, all these different systems, not fully thinking about the security ramifications of them. And of course, we as the UK have been hammered with cyber attacks this year, starting with Marks and Spencer's, the Co-op, Harrods, North Face, Adidas, Cartier, Pandora, Jaguar Land Rover, recently. The most abhorrent one, the kiddo nursery one that was last week. I mean, beyond abhorrent. And so, it's shined a spotlight on cyber like never before this year. At the lack of investment in systems, but also the importance of your people, of your workforce as well, of being sufficiently educated and trained to spot cyber threats as well before they happen. So I think that's certainly been a challenge this year, and I'm looking ahead to see how can we address it. Well, one of the initiatives that I'm working on is the launch of a new membership body and trade association that sits specifically within the intersection of AI and cyber. And it's going to be called the AI and Cybersecurity Association, and it's in soft launch mode at the moment, with a hard launch in the early new year when we'll start taking members in. And the association will be all around raising awareness of, promoting and championing the safe, secure, responsible and ethical use of AI. That's something I'm definitely seeing that's missing, and the association will be there to really champion and raise awareness and educate people around that whole safe and secure piece.
We commend you on that.
Thank you.
We wish you the very best of luck with it, and it's a tremendously important and vital initiative taking things forward, so best of luck with that, Lisa.
Thank you.
And to sort of on that just a bit further, what's the impact if organisations don't do anything? Because we see a lot of organisations sitting on their hands at the moment, waiting for something to come out. Absolutely,
and I was saying to Jay earlier, I was saying, if after after this year, if I get to January and I speak to another of any size organisation or business that say we don't need to worry about cyber, or we're too small so we're not going to get targeted, I give up and I'm leaving this industry, especially with the year that we've had. So I do implore businesses to say, whatever your size, there is help and support out there. There's so much that you can access, so much that you can do to protect yourselves. So look it all up. Get onto your local cyber resilience centre. Look at what the NCSC is doing. There's some great stuff out there that you can get hold of, and it's all for free as well. Nice.
Yeah, and I think if there's anything this year's taught us, is that after 15 years of banging the drum about cyber, it felt like boards had started to think that they knew best.
Yes.
And this year's proved
they don't.
As always, that they don't.
Absolutely.
So just excuse me. Leading on from that, if you could maybe make one bold prediction for 2026, and maybe caveat that with one safe prediction going forward, and if from the bold predictions perspective, how do you think that will change everything?
I think for next year we will start to see that little bit, I guess for want of a word, a kind of sort of backtrack on AI, just in terms of that safe, secure, responsible and ethical use. And I would love to see businesses, rather than just rush full steam ahead to adopt AI. I've been working with an organisation that wanted to roll out Copilot, and so when I spoke to them about it and I said, why do you want to roll it out? Well, we don't know, but everybody else is using it, so we should as well. And they had no clue, no governance, no anything.
Chasers have been shining.
Anything about it. All they wanted to do was, everybody else is using it, so we just need to roll out Copilot. No thought into it, whatsoever. What I would like to see is that more responsible use of it, ethical use. Shadow AI is a big thing as well at the moment. Again, I've been working with a couple of organisations that a lot of their staff have been circumventing controls that have been put in place, and they're using things that maybe necessarily they shouldn't be, or open source LLMs and so on. So I would like to see a lot more guardrails and fencing around it.
Talking about agentic AI earlier. Today, which is obviously going to become more and more and more prolific.
And I think what I would love to see in terms of prediction as well is more of the human in the loop when it comes to AI. And again, especially with the agentic AI and a lot of these chatbots and tools that you think you're talking to somebody, but you're actually not. I would love to see that more human in the loop element as well.
Which do you think is harder from your perspective, securing humans or securing the tech?
I don't like that phrase, people are the weakest link. I can't bear it, because they can actually be one of your most strongest lines of defense if you empower them, educate and train them correctly of the things to look out for. I use a lot of real world experiences and scenarios and so on within all the training that I deliver that really speaks to them, and if I can get people to acknowledge it on a personal basis, that will then cascade down into their work lives as well, so they'll be looking at all their work things from a security perspective as well.
Makes sense. And obviously we're at the International Cyber Expo. What brought you here today? What were you looking to achieve, and have you achieved that yet?
I have indeed. So for me, it's all about the community here. It's amazing to just walk around, catch up with people I haven't seen for ages, have those conversations. For example, I've been talking to people about the association today, and I've had not one negative comment about it, or nobody that has said to me, you're not on the right lines, or why are you doing that, and so on. Everybody's just been so supportive that, wow, the industry really does need this. I've had Office of Help support, so
and for businesses of all sizes, Lisa, I mean, it's
totally.
So important. We were talking about, we're part of Innovation X and obviously working on that side, and we were talking about AI, digital transformation, and about how companies should be looking at maybe taking small steps, bite-sized chunks, looking at what's broken, looking at what's not working, rather than a complete overhaul. That's important, really, and I think that's key. So just going back to Warren's question about ICE, one of the questions we're asking all our guests today is, sum up International Cyber Expo in one word.
Community.
Great answer.
And in terms of the future, I know you're driving this forward.
Yeah.
What else is on the horizon for you?
So I've got a book coming out next year. So I've got a book by Kogan Page Publishing on the intersection of AI and cybersecurity, and that was what. Well, I was researching and writing the book. That's what got me thinking about the trade association. So that's where that idea came from. And I've had a bit of a hiatus. I've not been able to get out to events like this for a few months now. But I will be getting out and about to a lot more events now. I've got a bit more flexibility.
No, that's brilliant. And look, for underrepresented groups that perhaps watching the channel, females in particular,
sure.
Could you share with us a career pathway into cyber and the 2 or 3 pros and cons of that sort of career pathway?
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. Cyber is for everyone, and I would love to see more women getting into the industry. We're doing better. I think some of the latest stats I'd seen that we were around 25% women, but I would love to see that improve as well. I mean, in terms of my pathway, I came from the entertainment industry. I'd spent years working with Chris Tarrant of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire fame, came into cyber in 2009, loved it so much, and I never looked back. So the best advice I can give is have a look at the resources on the UK Cybersecurity Council's website, because they've done a really good career mapping tool and a really good map out of various specialisms within cyber. So use that as a starting point. And you don't need a degree, you don't need to be technical. There's a lot of skills that is needed in cyber, so yeah.
Well, Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure and great to actually get to have you on the podcast and get some time with you. We'd love to have you back, maybe to do some panel discussions, maybe some live events, and maybe obviously talk a little bit more about your initiative and everything going into 2026, because I'm sure the community and all our listeners will find a great deal of value with that specific topic, as well as obviously your own insights going forward. So thank you once again.
No, thank
it's been
you.
an absolute
It's been
pleasure
an
to have
honour.
you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Allison and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals. We share their journeys, unique perspectives and offer advice and guidance. Today, we're at the International Cyber Expo, Olympia, London, and we're joined by Alex. Alex, could you give us a high-level overview of who you are and what's brought you here today?
Yeah, thanks, Warren. So I'm Alex Melbourne. I'm the founder and CEO of 0 Day. We have a cybersecurity SaaS platform. We sell to enterprise cyber teams, and they use it to manage the collaboration and engagements that they have with other parts of the business.
That's really interesting. And from where you're standing in the industry, are there any blind spots or perhaps frustrations or challenges that are really standing out to you that you feel that need highlighting?
Yeah, I think generally the cybersecurity culture and kind of openness within organisations. A lot of the teams that we work with, they have real struggles in understanding what technology exists in these organisations. So the assets, what projects are going on. Often security teams are the last to know. So that's all down to creating a culture of openness from the security team, giving out that message that we don't say no. That's the thing that's really important. Security teams should be there to say yes and not shut things down.
Being a business enabler is more important than being a blocker, and I think we've seen ones that succeed in security in particular are the ones that say yes or help other teams sort of have a workaround and put solutions in place.
Absolutely.
And obviously you've come to ICE today. What's brought you here? What was the draw to ICE, and what were you looking to achieve with that?
Yeah, so I come almost every year. The thing for me is bringing the people together, bringing the experts from the area. I always bump into people from old lives, old colleagues and customers sometimes as well. And I actually have a few partners here exhibiting today, so it's always good to catch up with them and just see what's going on in the industry. I always enjoy the seminars because it's great to hear from the leading experts, the thought leaders on the emerging technologies, the emerging threats, and what's generally going on in the industry.
Well, that's brilliant. I think it is important to spend time at grassroots level, not just for innovation's sake, but to find out what the challenges are others are facing, so you can arm yourself with the skills and knowledge to sort of overcome them. And with that in mind, your challenges, are there any challenges that you perhaps faced in your career or even as a founder? And if so, how did you overcome that challenge and what was the lesson learned?
Challenges. Yes, I mean many as a founder, because it's certainly a rocky road to success. I can think of one actually.
A mistake that you made perhaps along the way?
Well, I'll give you a mistake actually from my career. So my background is software development. One of my first roles, I was working on a project. It was a HR system that we developed, and I was actually changing the code on a live production system, trying to debug an issue. I mistakenly sent a notification out to somebody, and it sent one of the employees at one of our customers the salary information for somebody else. They emailed straight back and said, "Hey, I shouldn't be seeing this. What is this?" And I kind of thinking on my feet quickly, I said, "Oh, it's just test data. Don't worry about it. Disregard it." I went and told my manager and got a bit of a kicking. But that was a good lesson actually in data and information and the power of information. And I've kind of took that forward, obviously now in the cybersecurity industry, protecting information is super important. And it's not just bytes, people just think about a database, they don't think about actually what's in there and the impact that it can have on individuals. So that's my takeaway.
That's brilliant. And look, appreciate you work in a highly pressurized environment. You're getting boards, sort of put pressure on you, teams below, and of course society relies on you to protect it, especially if you're protecting the customers, for instance. So how do you keep your mindset balanced when it comes to well-being? Because I know it can be a pressurized environment, and other individuals who speak to sometimes struggle with burnout, for instance. So what do you do? Is there anything you do outside of work that keeps you balanced?
I'm an avid squash player, so that's my outlet for all the aggression and the stress, and kind of keeps me quite balanced. But yeah, and again, this is probably from founder experience. I don't panic. I never panic, or act kind of rashly when I'm put under pressure. So that's kind of advice I always give people. Even in high stakes, high pressure situations, it's always good to take a step back, take a breath. And just think through slowly and act kind of second.
That's some incredible advice. Now tell us a bit more about the business. How did you find the business? What challenges are you helping organisations solve? What type of organisations? And what's next?
Yeah, sure. So in my software development years, I actually got involved in a project to develop some software for a large telecoms organisation. That was my first kind of introduction to cybersecurity, and I thought it was very interesting because it's so broad but also so deep. So that was about 12 years ago now.
Was that a hard transition from software development, or was it just like a natural one?
Yeah, it was natural because having that kind of technical background, and then as cybersecurity came in as a concept, because it wasn't really a concept, 20 years ago when I was developing, it wasn't really spoke about. So as that came in, obviously those technical skills cut across, and you having an understanding of how things work is paramount when you're trying to protect them. Worked with a few other companies and their cyber teams. Realised that they didn't really have the tools that they wanted. They were often given tools from the broader organisation, and they were supplementing with manual processes, and it was really painful for them. So we started 0 Day with a view of building tools that security teams actually like to use, purpose built for them, for their needs, and not thinking about anything broader than that. So that's really what we've been focused on. We've kind of evolved over the years, and as we've seen this problem, this disconnect between security teams and other parts of the business, we've started to focus more on that. I mean, it's kind of it seems really simple to say, but if a security team is there to ensure the business can do what it does best, it needs to know what that business is doing. It needs to know what tools that business is working with. And that's really, what 0 Day is about. It's about helping the security team be aligned and intelligent and operational when it comes to applying cybersecurity to business operations.
That's brilliant. And I appreciate you can't disclose anything confidential, but could you share with us perhaps one or two success stories from one of your clients? So one of our clients, one part of our system is around project assurance, so making sure security controls are applied early in projects and not last minute, one day before go live.
So we have a customer now that one of our customers runs every project in the business through our application, and out of that they get the right-sized security controls for each project. So if it's a small project, it's usually a bit of guidance and they can go away and take that away and implement it themselves. For bigger projects, it gives the security team a checklist or a build sheet of controls that they need to make sure are applied in the project. So that customer's had really good success. It's really given them better visibility of projects and initiatives that are happening across the business. And as a result, they've become more resilient.
Oh, that's fantastic. And obviously you're here today. I'm sure we're going to have a little chinwag later on, but what does the ideal client look like for you? People that are watching that potentially want to be customers.
Sure, yeah. So we generally deal with large organisations with dedicated security teams. I think our smallest customer is 5 or 6 people in the security team. Our larger customers can be 50, 60, 70 people. So we generally shine on those larger security teams that are dealing with large kind of customer base. So maybe different geographies, different subsidiaries. So yeah, generally the kind of larger enterprise.
And why is that?
That's kind of our experience. So my experience coming from a developer, I was building enterprise kind of grade software. So I've been used to seeing those challenges of dealing with lots of people, dealing with high scale. So yeah, that's kind of our experience has driven us into that path. And we just find it interesting because again, it's a people thing. It becomes more of a people issue as you have a bigger team. And that's really what I'm passionate about.
Well, that's brilliant. And look, it's a question we've been asking a lot of people all day. What's easier to secure, tech or people?
Oh yes, that's an interesting one. I'd have to go for people. I think you can build the best set of controls in your environment. You can buy the best tools, but if those things aren't applied at the right time, and that's generally where people come into play, it can really fall down. I think the other one, just more broadly, kind of what we're seeing in the market, the defense perimeter. It used to be data centers, and then it moved to devices, and now it's kind of identity. They've seen a lot of attacks on, on individuals and kind of identity theft and stealing credentials. So I think that kind of side of things, again, it's a people thing. Again, the best controls can't prevent that. So yeah, I think people is the hardest. You've also got people coming in and out of organisations all the time, so that training and awareness piece and making sure behaviours are good, general cyber hygiene behaviours are good. It's really important.
That's brilliant. And going back to obviously your earlier career as a developer, we certainly work with organisations at the moment that want to adopt a DevSecOps culture, and we've advised that they buddy up the developers with security personnel. That allows security personnel to get some development experience, as well as sort of vice versa. But in terms of career pathways, what would you say the 3 pros and 3 cons are for a developer that wants to transition into cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, I think as time goes on, being a developer isn't enough. I think they have to have that understanding of security and the different layers of the development stack and how it's applied at each of those stacks. And plus, me being a developer myself and going into cybersecurity, I know that it's rewarding.
Welcome to Secure Cyber Connect Live. Today we're at International Cyber Expo and we're joined by Kieran. Kieran, could you give us a high-level overview of who you are?
Sure, so my name's Kieran. I'm a founder of Fortify Cyber. So I've been a pen tester for about 15 years. I know I don't look it, but I have. Lots of different areas of pen testing, so all offensive security, like web apps, infrastructure, your more vanilla stuff, as well as some more interesting stuff like social engineering and hardware testing, but all offensive security for my career.
And tell us a little bit more about Fortify, Kieran, if you'd be so kind.
So we are an offensive security company, so we do pen testing, offensive security, and that's all we do. So we're a CREST accredited business focusing on helping provide assurance for customers. So if customers have concerns about their security of their applications, mobile apps, AI stuff, we're seeing a lot more kind of AI implementations, LLM stuff. We want to make sure that stuff is secure because there's a lot of potentially sensitive data in there, so yeah, that's what we're all about.
And in your opinion, what's the number one challenge out there at the moment? And what are we, I suppose, what do you think the industry's trying to do in terms of trying to solve that?
So the thing is, there's lots of big problems, right? Like, and I'm very biased. Like, my background is pen testing, and there's the kind of old adage of if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So, but from that perspective, pen testing can help provide assurance around a lot of those things, right? So I know I'm biased here, but we feel that, you know, offensive cybersecurity, doing things that bad guys do, can give you insight into kind of the threats that your organization is exposed to. So, in fact, one of the things we've done a lot of recently, we've come up with this concept of what we're calling micro red team services. So, adversary simulation or red team engagements are a way for businesses to kind of go head to head against a real world style attacker. There's a lot of value in that because you move slowly. When we're doing those types of engagement, we're moving slowly. We're trying not to get caught by the blue team, by the defenders. Sometimes we do get rumbled, but we try not to, right? And so the advantages of that are quite clear because it should give your organization an insight as to how you would stack up against a real attack. The downside of that type of engagement is that it's prohibitively expensive. As a ballpark figure, you would expect to be spending 100 grand-ish on a full red team engagement.
I've seen some of the big four, even 200 grand, 250 grand per year for them.
Absolutely. And so what we're trying to do is say, right, how can we take some of those lessons learned that you would get from a full red team and distill it into more of a pen test style engagement? So that's what a micro red team service is. So we're looking at saying, okay, let's do a physical engagement where we're trying to get into your office premises and say, right, we're going to deploy the machine onto your network, and if we can do that and gain a foothold, then that is, you know, that's some assurance that you didn't have before as to how your physical security controls stack up. We still don't know all the details of what's happened with JLR and with Co-op and with M&S and all these other guys. But what seems to be happening is there's some sort of a phishing element here or a vishing element where people are social engineering their way into compromising user accounts. So again, we've looked at that part of a red team engagement, that initial foothold, so targeted phishing campaigns we've done as a micro red team service. As far as we know, some of these most recent compromises, they've happened because people are giving away user accounts. People are phoning up and saying, oh, I'm just come back off my holiday and I can't remember what my password is, can you let me in? And if you are a British person, you sound British, and you sound like, yeah, this could be Bob, then the help desk, especially if it's outsourced, potentially are going to say, yeah, no problem, here's your account reset, here's your password, oh, and here's your MFA as well reset, we'll just sort that out for you. So those are the type of micro red team services we're doing, like with targeted phishing attacks. So what we've been doing is phoning up the help desk multiple times, impersonating different users, and then also phoning up users impersonating the help desk to say, hey, we've seen some strange activity on your account. Like, I'm from your company's help desk. We need you to tell us what your password is so we can check it out. There's something weird going on. We need to help you out with this investigation. The other thing we've been doing is phoning the finance team and saying, hey, I'm from this supplier. We've changed our bank details. We need you to update your records so that the next time you pay us, it goes to the right bank account. And the reason we're doing these kinds of things is because this is what we've seen in real life. This is what real life threat actors are doing. And this is what the kind of insights you might get from a full-blown red team. But you might not have 100 grand. So, you can get a lot of the insights with a lot less budget.
So that sounds really, really interesting. And what's the impact if organisations aren't being proactive? Obviously you and the team are making it a bit more financially rewarding, but why is this particular area important?
I think it's important because one of the things that we like to do, one of the things we think sets us apart from other pen testing companies is whenever we have scoping conversations with our customers or potential customers, we want to understand what's keeping you up at night. If we're speaking to a CISO or an IT manager, we want to know what are you worried about? Because what we find is a lot of customers will do the same pen test every year. They'll get, broadly speaking, the same report every year, and they're going through that process, spending a bunch of money and not really getting any value out of it, and then they're worrying about something else. So we're like, hey, if you're worried about someone stealing a laptop, if you're worried about someone compromising your finance team, if you're worried about whatever it is, let's have a conversation, because we might be able to do something bespoke for you, and actually you're probably not the only person worrying about this, and that gives us really good insights to talk to other customers especially within an industry, we've had some really great success from a sales perspective, having deep, in-depth conversations with someone from a specific industry, and then being able to talk to other people from the industry saying, hey, we spoke to someone else like you, and they were worried about this. And they're like, we're worried about that. Like, yeah, of course you are. Right, so then it allows us to have like really genuine conversations with our customers. We understand what their concerns about, and we can also hopefully provide some assurance against those threats. So yeah, this whole thing where customers do the same test every single year, we call it the Pentest trap, and we feel that there's so many customers out there who are just going through the motions of getting a pen test done without really getting the value from it. So our thought process is, look, you've got to spend this money on an annual pen test anyway. Let's get some value out of it. You kind of have your cake and eat it too. Like, and it seems like a no-brainer. And a lot of our customers kind of agree with that, I think.
Pentest Trap sounds like a good name for a film, to be fair.
I reckon, I agree.
So look, talking about events such as ICE, why do you think events such as International Cyber Expo are so important to the industry? What's brought you here? And why do you think ICE maybe stand out against other events?
So
three questions there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll try and break them down. So we're here as an exhibitor. We were here last year, and frankly, the reason we're back this year is because we made more money from having conversations than it cost us for the stand. So it's a fairly simple commercial.
There's a real authenticity here as well, I think, though, in terms of the cyber sector. It feels like they care.
Yeah, I agree. And also, a lot of the people here are from there are lots of events where a lot of the people are kind of the same field. Here, there's a really big mix.
Yeah, agreed.
So we've had some conversations with people from, especially because we're next to the security guys. So we had some really interesting conversations last year that ended up becoming some billable work with some, I can't talk about it too much, but with some like MOD style stuff. We would never have been able to get an interaction with that type of customer had we not been here.
Yeah.
Like, we had a conversation with them. They were like, oh, Kieran seems to really love pen testing. So that kind of allowed us to kind of, yeah, exactly. We kind of, lay our stand out and say, hey, this is us, this is who we are, this is our background, this is what we care about. And it resonated with those guys, and we sold some work off the back of it, and we've got a really good relationship with them. So yeah, it's a really diverse group of people coming to these type of events that you don't see at every other cyber event.
Agreed, and it's nicely laid out as well. It's not too overwhelming as some of them can often be. Just tell me a little bit about your predictions for next year then. Give us a bold prediction for 26 and I suppose, what do you think is going to, without AI,
so
let's not go AI.
Yeah.
But what else do you think could change the game out there within the next sort of 12 months or so?
So I know you said not AI, but I think AI is... So, we do actually quite a bit of AI testing at the moment, AI LLM testing.
It's not that I don't, it's purely and simply, I'm just not sure I can talk about AI
everyone's
anymore.
Talking about it all day, every day. I know, I get it. So, one of the interesting things that we've noticed is, and I should caveat this by saying, there are lots of very, very good organizations doing really
100%.
cool and secure stuff with AI.
Amazing.
What we're also seeing is kind of do you remember, I can't remember how long ago it was, sort of 5-10 years at this point, IoT blew up, and all of a sudden all of these companies started doing IoT devices that were connected to the internet. And from a security perspective, it was a nightmare, because you had all these vendors who had never done cybersecurity before, suddenly impacted by cybersecurity. Whilst there are lots of people doing AI, LLM stuff in a really secure way, there are also lots of people who have never really considered cybersecurity pushing these type of services online.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this weird juxtaposition of, like, obviously the kind of, from a pen testing perspective, the prompt injection stuff is really interesting. Like, we're doing a lot of interesting work in that field, even building out new methodologies, because there isn't, there's OWASP has been around forever. OWASP is the go-to for any kind of app security, and they are working on AI stuff too, but there isn't a go-to methodology for AI LLM testing at the moment. So it's all kind of a new world for everybody. But putting all that to one side, what we're seeing is old web app bugs that are solved problems because you've got these people who are, I'm sure, incredibly good at what they do in the AI world, taking on projects that they don't really understand the web app fundamentals.
And never the twain shall
Well,
meet.
exactly, yeah. So it's an interesting time.
We certainly see a lot of startups coming out, obviously leveraging AI, and they are putting security at the forefront. And I think a lot of them are going to fall over in the coming months, especially those that are hoping and dreaming that they're going to get acquired by PE and VC firms. And as myself and Jay know, PEs and VCs go through due diligence.
Yes.
They find the most attractive companies, the ones that have put security at the forefront of their product and service, of course. And with that in mind, are there any career pathways that you'd recommend to our audience, and what would be a pro and con of that said pathway within cyber, for instance?
So, I've had a few conversations already, like, again, a super diverse group of people at this type of event. I've had half a dozen people already come up and say, I want to be a pen tester. What do I do? Where do I start? I think that I'm obviously biased. I think having a human in the mix, like automated pen testing and stuff like that, is huge at the moment. And I think there is a place for it. I think that I'm not someone who says, oh, it's all rubbish, it's nowhere near as good as a person. There is value in it. What AI can't do, and I don't think it's going to be able to do anytime soon, is understand context.
Absolutely.
And so having a person, I always say a meat sack, having a meat sack in the loop that can say, that's weird. Like, some of the best bugs I've found in my career started from going through some kind of assessment where I'm like, that's a weird way of doing that. Like, it's not necessarily inherently insecure or silly, it's just, I've never seen anyone do it that way before. And then you start digging, and then, AI doesn't have spidey senses. And that's a lot of, if you speak to any pen tester, any offensive security assessor.
And I think that goes for the whole of the industry.
I think so, yeah.
We're in an interesting time. We talked about this quite a lot on the pod, on the channel, and to some degree today. We're at the cusp of probably the most important developments is PCs, really, I think, with AI.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's been that quick to run headlong into it that we've talked about the governance, the methodologies, all the major stuff that really, the foundations, we're kind of making it up as we go along a little bit to try and backfill
Absolutely.
a lot of what's going on. But I think from a pen testing perspective, are you still seeing a lot of people wanting to get into that industry, Kieran? Do you feel that that's still something that is a viable role for people, even with the human-centered piece within automation?
I'm biased. I think yes, definitely. And then where I was originally going with this is the piece of advice I would give you, whether it's pen testing or whatever it is, if you want to get into the cyber field, the best piece of advice I can give you is to go practice. Like, there are so many freely available resources out there for pen testing or for SOC stuff, like whatever it is, whatever career in cyber you want to kind of chase. There are so many free resources out there. The difficulty is, whilst there's this huge, we talk about the gap, right, between there's never enough cyber people, right? We just don't have enough people in the industry, and there's all these people trying to get in, that's bizarre. We've got all these people who are trying to get into cyber that can't, but we've got all these positions that we can't fill, which is a weird place to be in. As a hiring manager, the biggest thing I care about isn't what certs you have. It's not whether you have a degree or what degree. What I care about is, can you do the job, or can you be coached to be able to do the job? And so what we want to see is practical expertise as well as consulting. There's two parts to being a pen tester, and I think a lot of focus is given to the technical element, like can you make SQL injection work is obviously important, but we also want to understand, can you explain that to a customer, and more importantly, can you explain how to fix it? Because that, at the end of the day, is what the customer is paying for. Like, the piece of paper is the artifact. Like, you might do one of those £200,000 red team engagements. All of your hard work, if it's not accounted for on that artifact, is wasted.
What's the best way for individuals to sort of sharpen their report writing skills? Is there any tips you can give in that respect?
That's a really good question. That is a really good question. So this is a bit of secret sauce, actually. So I have a sort of a recipe that I make all of my team do whenever we're writing issues. The first paragraph should introduce the problem, like in layman's terms. Like, the problem is, a lack of segregation, for example. Then we go into more specific details as to why this affects you, what impact this can have, how it could be leveraged. Here is an example so that you as a customer can reproduce it, and then the same recipe is on the remediation. So the fix for this problem is to do X in simple terms, but then we go into more detail. And what we always try and do is, and this is a fairly silly example, but my opinion on how remediation advice should work is we should be as specific as we can. Like, as a consultant, that's what I see my role as. Like, you're paying me, frankly, a lot of money to give you this advice, so it should be as specific as it can be. So as a silly example, if I can see that there's an Apache header turned on, and our advice is that you turn that off so that, there's no info disclosure, the remediation should say exactly how to do that in the Apache version you're using. Like, we should be doing the legwork to find out how to fix this problem for you. Now, we can't always give it, blow by blow as to how to solve it, but where we can, we should. So yeah, that's my general recipe: is start off simple, give the highlights at the top, because the thing is, there'll be different people reading your reports. Some of them will be, CISO or someone technical or an engineer who's going to be actually fixing it. Someone might be a board member who isn't. They don't know
absolutely.
what SQL injection is or Kerber roasting, and frankly they don't care. They just want to understand what impact does it have to my organisation.
Yeah, and it's that manicuring that storytelling in the right way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, Kieran, we could talk for a long time, and just fascinating to listen to obviously what you've had to say. I think we'd certainly get some value in bringing you onto a live panel and maybe doing some more discussions with you, so we can really get into it and talking about pen testing and maybe within that automated space, and really talk about it with some other of our people within the network. I'm certain that even from today's live episode, and it's certainly been an interesting experiment today to navigate our way through this. The community will have got a lot of value from what you've had to say, and we'd certainly like to talk further with Fortify and yourself going forward. So thank you for everything, and wish you all the very best going forward.
Welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast, and today you're joining us live from the International Cyber Expo at Olympia, London. Today we're thrilled to be joined by Jane and Allison. Jane, Allison, could you give us a high-level overview of who you are and what's brought you to ICE today?
Of course, thank you. My name is Jane Bashford Hobbs, and I am one of two co-founders for Amicus HR, who specialise in human resources consultancy for the tech and cyberspace.
My name is Allison Norman. I'm also co-founder and director of Amicus HR, and I have decades, unfortunately, of experience helping start-up and small SMEs who are high growth in the tech industry.
So I'll start with the biggie. How can HR professionals effectively integrate cybersecurity into their people strategies?
Do you want me to take that one? Well, as anybody will know, cybersecurity isn't just about the tins and wires. It's much more about human behaviour as well, which is where we come in, ensuring that we provide organisations with the types of professionals that have the requisite qualifications, that have the requisite understanding of the industry sector that they're going into, and the ability to perform. And we help organisations make sure, or from a startup perspective, that we enable them to start compliantly by putting their basic processes in place, making sure that they're compliant from right to work checks, from company handbooks, policies and procedures, making sure that they're onboarding people effectively. But of course, with regards to embedding people into an organisation, especially where cyber is concerned, it's a bit of a joint relationship between us and CISOs, whom I said earlier on, don't just focus on tins and wires. It's a collaborative relationship, helping people understand actually what is the strategy for the organisation and how do we all march towards it as one, all understanding where it is that, where is the end goal, where is our North Star. So I'd say that's the main thing. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered it all off.
And how do you see the role of AI evolving within HR? I guess particularly maybe, I suppose in terms of enhancing the employee experience. And also, I suppose, in terms of maybe operational efficiency, of course,
Yeah, of course. Well, you'll see from, right to work checks, Everything is going in that direction. It's not going to slow down anytime soon, and so organisations like us will be using AI to onboard people, to check that they have the requisite right to work checks. I mean, we've seen this with announcements that are coming in via the government with regards to ID cards. There will be an element of AI included in that. But one of our clients specifically, we're working with Data Mbit, who are looking at deepfake threats. So, example, when you're interviewing somebody, making sure that actually you're interviewing a human being, and that you're not interviewing a dummy who is, an AI dummy, somebody that isn't a human being, who's going to try and infiltrate your business, who will gain access to systems and processes, and so on and so forth. So it's really important that HR jumps on this AI bandwagon before it's too late.
Yeah,
I think we absolutely are going to see more of it, yes, yeah.
And something we've been asking people all day, what do you think is easier to secure, or low-hanging fruit for organisations to secure, technology or the people?
Ooh, well, I know my answer to that, but I feel like I ought to give Alison a chance to speak.
So what's going to be more secure?
What's easier to secure? People or tech?
I think it's going to be tech at the moment. I think it's really hard for a lot of people in this industry to find the right people. But then is that a bigger question about diversity? Is it a bigger question about having more women, for example, in cyber communities? And one area that's very close to my heart, when you think about 20% of the workforce being neurodiverse now, I think that's a really big area where people who are neurodiverse, they have certain skills that can really help people with AI tech. They can see things like patterns far more easily, for example, in code. So I think we need to think about how we can nurture those people coming into tech and also cyber, and how we can train and support organisations and also managers so that they can support people who are neurodiverse, because they think differently, they communicate differently, and that is something that I see as really big going forward.
I appreciate you bringing it up.
They have different wants and needs as well, and I think that's something that organisations are going to have to get their head around. No longer do we have the stereotypical hierarchies. We're seeing much flatter structures than we've seen historically, and we were in a conversation this morning about how Gen Z no longer will apply for a role that doesn't feed into all of their needs. So there's a certain amount of benefits that they want, there's a certain amount of flexibility in the role that they want, time away, sabbaticals, you name it. So it's no longer a 9 to 5. Here is the salary, take it or not. It's not actually. I'll look for something else that really meets my needs. So we're seeing that the workforce is much more, I was going to say fussier, but that's not the right word, much more selective about the types of companies that they're willing to work for. And so companies are having to really think about their, what we call EVP, their employee value proposition, before they start searching for roles, I'd say.
Allison, do you think that's going to switch back? Do you think the pendulum's going to go to the employers demanding what they want as opposed to people on the market?
Yeah, I think it will in time. And I think another thing that we haven't just spoken about as well is how I'd love to see businesses working with universities and also schools a lot more to try and get people thinking about having a career in tech, a career in cyber. And that, especially for women as well, that it's not a scary thing, and that women can have a great growth structure. And obviously we've got women in cyber here, women in tech, which are two fantastic bodies. How can we bridge those gaps? And that's a huge thing to think about. It takes a huge cultural shift from a work perspective, but it is something I'm thinking about. How can we do it? How can we make this successful going forward? Yeah. I hope someone's got the answer, and if they can they write it on a postcard?
Just keep diving in and trying to do things.
Yeah, it's keeping, as they say, pushing the envelope the whole time. You just push, and you speak to people. And I speak to the deputy head of my daughter's school, who actually is very open-minded about people coming in and various organisations. So that's great, because he's someone that I can push with, and he's very open. Which is good.
There's been a big change in the last few years. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that there's a lot of tokenism still, and there is still a lot of people who are talking a good game in a soft market, because the tech and cyber market hasn't necessarily been at its optimal. And I think now when the markets are starting to become more bullish, which they are becoming again and again, obviously over the next sort of year or so, we're going to go into what probably will be a very buoyant 26. It's making sure that these are implemented in terms of a diverse workforce,
and
especially women in senior roles as well.
I think they're the ones that have to lead by example. They're the ones that have to go out into the schools, and so girls can feel that they are empowered to chase and have these positions. I for one would love to do that. So if anyone wants me, I will go. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, you're right. I think we are going to have to be more diverse of thought, and without getting too political. I know Trump has said he wants DE&I to go. He's not the greatest supporter of that. I really hope it doesn't go this way in the UK, because these are initiatives that do need to take place in order to make sure that we do have that diversity of thought. And although we've spoken about women and neurocyber, it's diversity everywhere, because when you get teams who are diverse, you get a greater level of thinking and a more positive outcome, and surely that is a win-win for everyone.
Also as well, I think that we've got to look at STEM subjects. We've got to keep that focus on STEM subjects, particularly for women. To give you an example, most boys will know their way under the bonnet of a car. Rarely do fathers engage with children, their female children, to go and learn to tinker, to learn to engineer, and so on and so forth. So I think we've got to put a focus on those STEM subjects from a very early age. And also, we need more female entrepreneurs. We don't have enough female entrepreneurs, and that comes from as a result of not having that grassroots, base skill set that boys are offered, that sadly girls aren't. There are different expectations of girls than there are of boys. We're raised very, very differently. And I don't know that it's something that either sex can understand if you haven't lived that experience, really. So, my encouragement would go to women in particular to take that step to become entrepreneurs, because I think, it's like that adage, isn't it? If a female is applying for a role, if she can do 50 to 60% of it, she won't apply for the role until she feels she can do 80 to 85% of it. A man will apply if he can do about 30% of it, and will fake it till he makes it. But women are that much less secure in their abilities, but they have a completely different skill set to men, and so they need to focus on pushing forward and having the courage to take those big meaty steps and get involved in something like this.
What else can organisations do to make some of the application processes more appealing to women, for instance? I know using different adverbs of she, he, him, witnesses, that sort of thing, but is there anything else?
I think it's not even about the she, he, really. I mean, they shouldn't be specifying the sex that's particularly attractive to that
person to add value to the organisation.
What they need to be doing is looking at CVs, looking at blind CVs, for example, where it might be that the education history is removed. It might be that the name is removed. Any gender references are removed. That in itself will ensure that they're looking at it from a completely unbiased viewpoint, and that's really important. More organisations will do that. I mean, I think it was actually the Conservative government that were considering making that mandatory. So it wouldn't surprise me if at some point in the future successive governments do say that all CV submissions have to be blind going forward. I'm not saying I necessarily align to that, and there are some instances where you absolutely can't do that when you need a female or a male in a specific role for a specific reason. However, we do have to find different ways to ensure that women are pushed to the forefront, because the fact of the matter is, boards that have women on them outperform boards that don't by something like 15%. So it's about the bottom line. It's very much about the bottom line for businesses.
And let's talk about ICE. What brings you to ICE, and why do you think ICE probably stands out against other expos, other events? And what do you want to take away from this?
Yeah, okay. Do you want to, I can start and pass on. Do you want to? So we're here today because obviously as a HR consultancy that specialise in tech and cyber, this is our natural home to come and network. There's some amazing opportunities to network. Everyone is very, very friendly here. And I think just look at the size of the arena here. I don't know if you call it an arena, conference centre, whatever you would call it.
It's out here though, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Some others that you go to where it's a bit...
Yeah, there's a map just at the end there where people are putting in pins to dictate the country that they've come from. And people have come here today from all over the world, from the farthest flung countries, haven't they? So I think this is a natural home for this sector to meet. I think it's very authentic, yeah.
What about you, Alison? Has anything stood out today in terms of the stores, the talks, people?
Well, we've had a very interesting talk with Data Ambit who've spoken about what they're doing, and as I said, they're a client of ours, so it's great to come and actually support them. What has been really nice is because we are a relatively new company, that we are starting to see people at all of these events now, the cyber community, as it were, that we get to know and just to say hello to and find out what they're up to. So we actually are starting to see growth journeys of the companies that we've started to speak to. So I think that's really nice that you can be a part of that. You can speak to people that are around, and I think it's great as well here that we've got a number of bodies such as the Welsh Government, for example, Women in Tech, as I've spoken about, that are all here that we can speak to and ask how can we help, because it's not just about us being here. Yes, we are on a mission to help as many startups and SMEs as possible, but there are other things that Jane and I champion, such as more women in tech and also every child online. If you want to get rid of your laptops, etc. and so forth, check them out. They're a great bunch of people. And, you know, they are people that we can also support as well. So, yeah.
It's about the insights as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
The insights that you gain, you know, at a gathering like this are second to none. You'll hear about cutting-edge technology before it's gone to market. You know, it's so, you know, at the stage where people are patenting their ideas. So I think it's a great place to come to network, join new organisations, and learn what, you know, the direction of the industry, learn which way it's going.
Certainly. And look, can you tell us a bit more about the business, your solution offering, you know, how that can benefit our community and audience as a whole, and you know, how people can actually get in contact with you girls, ladies?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. You can select. So our website is amicushr.com. Allison and I are the co-founders, and we work with a collective group of consultants that work for us, that we deliver HR consultancy services across the board. So I'll let Allison go into detail about all of those services before I hog the microphone.
So we provide what we would call end-to-end people HR services. So from when you want to bring somebody on, and we can do recruitment and work with you, there right through until somebody offboards, leaves you. But obviously there's everything else in between. So I see HR very much like a jigsaw puzzle, and it's all about building a culture. It's all about making sure your managers and your leaders know how to treat people, how to look after them. It's about putting in good well-being and support mechanisms, making sure you're compliant. I mean, I think a really big area, and where I think we will become more busy, is in the next couple of months. The Employment Rights Act will receive royal assent. Those are 28 pieces of legislation that are going to be changing. As a result, the government have already published the roadmap for that, taking us through to 2027. But if you're a small SME or a startup, what does that actually mean to you? There will be some pieces of the legislation that it will apply to you, and other pieces it won't. But when you are a startup founder, or you're the CEO of a small SME, you don't want the sleepless nights thinking about that, and that's where we can take that pain away from you and just give you practical help, advice and support on what you need to do, how you need to do it. So we take the pain away, I think, is the way to put it.
Well, look, we wish you both the very, very best of luck with things, and I'm sure we'll be doing a lot more, probably interacting as time goes by, because I think from our perspective, we're looking at more panel discussions, more live events, and I think to have a HR slant and look at that intersection between security and HR and AI, of course, and HR is going to bring a lot to the conversation. So we'd certainly like to continue the dialogue on the back of this rather snappy live podcast we've done today. So we'd like to thank you for joining us,
Well,
and we look forward to further engagement with you.
Thanks. Yes, thanks for inviting us.
Welcome to the Secure CyberConnect podcast live. Our insightful and exciting guest on this episode is Sanjie Mahajan, Principal Security Engineer at Cyber Services, and that's cyber with an S. Yes. Sanjie, yes? So look, I want to kick things off by asking you a little bit about ICE. You know, what brings you to these events? Where do you feel the best value can be taken from an event such as ICE? So what are you looking for from this?
Sure. So thanks Jay, for inviting me to this podcast. So I recently moved from Australia to London, and I've been going to conferences like cybersecurity for the last 5 years, and the most value add I see in cyber conferences like ICE is like giving back to the community, learning from the community, and then sharing and learning kind of attitude that conferences have. So when I came to London, the first thing I saw was like the first upcoming cyber conferences, and the first name popped up was ICE. And then I met this lovely guy, Warren, through LinkedIn. I was looking for some jobs to have a local exposure here, and then he introduced me to the ICE, and like I said, okay, definitely I'm coming here and understanding what UK is all about cyber, and I'm also going in the other conferences like B-Sides. I'm applied for talking in B-Sides. I'll be presenting there if selected, and then Black Hat is my next go-to. So it's in December, so I have tickets for that as well. So yeah.
And you've worked in different continents. You've got exposure to diversity of thought, and of course, challenges. So, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing across industry at the moment, and what can we do better to address those challenges?
Perfect. Thank you so much for that question. So the biggest challenges I've seen in industry right now is the lack of awareness, and the classic example is like every vendor in nowadays, like companies are moving towards cloud. The cloud has become a de facto standard, and when they move to cloud, they're under the impression that, hey, we are going with AWS, we are going with Google Cloud, or we are going with Microsoft, and they're under the impression that we are secure by design because we are going under their banner in the cloud adoption. And based on my experience and the practical engagements I've done with the clients, it is not the case, because it is a shared responsibility. The vendors tell them, but it is written in this asterisk and nobody reads it. It's like, and then the false sense of security is the biggest challenge I've seen in the industry. And as I feel bad for cybersecurity industry, because we don't have much people who are able to remove this illusion from the industry. We are going with the trend that yes, it is service providers' responsibility. Even security people are going with that trend because they're not able to tell them clearly it is an illusion. And I'm trying to break that illusion through the talks.
And look, we all know that AI is, a pretty safe bet to become more and more entrenched within cyber. Give me another prediction that you think's sort of coming down the road in the next sort of 12 months. What else do you think is a pretty bold prediction or maybe challenge that cyber will face, and what can we do about it?
Okay, so my bold prediction is like AI is going to take a lot of jobs away from security. I know it's a negative thing to say, but it is. But the only thing I would say is like AI is not going to take jobs. It is like the person who knows AI better will take away jobs from a person who doesn't know AI. So knowing AI and knowing like AI literacy is a must. And in the next 12 months, and gone are the days like AI would do things in days where it used to be months and years. Like when we saw a trend in the market, it used to be years, like from waterfall moving to a dynamic this agile technology, it took years. But AI is doing it in days and months. So doing AI literacy is a must for everyone. Otherwise, the jobs are definitely going to get reduced.
And going back to cloud security, we spoke about it earlier today, micro-segmentation, for instance, Kubernetes. What are some of the myths out there? What are the things that you want to challenge and draw attention to in that respect in terms of securing those systems?
Yeah, so that's really close to me because I have seen that in room full of. So cloud security, when it comes to cloud, like it is heavily protected and controlled by DevOps people. And for DevOps, their cloud infrastructure or their CI/CD technology is like a mother to a son relation. So they don't find any weaknesses in their technology tech stack. Like a mother will never find any fault in the son. It's the neighbors who tell their mother that your son has some faults and is doing something wrong. So I am that neighbor. And DevOps people never like me, like they hate me to the core, and they would never let me touch the environment. So the way I was able to find a solution was I became friends with them. Like I gave them a trust zone that I'm not here to find faults, I'm here to just validate what you're doing because you don't have bandwidth. You can do it yourself. You can secure your technology, but you don't have bandwidth. Your job, your day-to-day job is to make things, build, and let me help you do what you can't do in your 10 hours job or 12 hours job. So I have done research on that, and let me find, like, is it the job you're doing, is it worth investing so much of your time? Because if someone comes, an outsider, and attacks it, all your efforts are gone, and so is your job. So I will just help you, and I'm a helping arm. I'm not here to find faults.
And look, we've talked a lot on our channel with many of our fully fledged podcast episodes over the year about early years cyber, parents, teachers, obviously kids, online safety. What would be your take on just maybe one piece of advice that you could give anybody really with regards to, online safety and social engineering and so on?
Definitely, really good question. And I was in a conference recently, and one of the presenter was about talking about cybersecurity awareness, and she presented a case where an Australian kid committed suicide because he was being bullied on on social media. So what I understood from that, and based on my personal experiences, especially with the kids and youngsters, you have to become their trust zone. You have to be their safe zone. Rather than telling them don't do this, do this. They don't understand doing this and don't do this. Everybody knows going on Instagram is not safe, talking to strangers is not safe. They know that. But if you are their safe zone, become a safe zone for the youngsters first, so that they can share their activities with you, and you have an oversight what they're doing. And anything goes wrong, they can come back to you. Rather than just dictating and saying don't do this, don't go there, don't go this. Don't dictate. Be their friends and be their safe zone.
Yeah, good advice. Tell us a little bit more about, obviously, your business. Let's talk a little bit more about cyber.
So cyber is a company, it's a services-based company. We provide all the security services, like anything that is on the left of the go live, anything that's left of production, for example, security architecture, security services, hands-on penetration testing or mobile app testing, anything that is related to your security testing or architecture or engineering. And what we do, and I'm really proud of it, is we don't just do it on theory-based kind of work or assumption-based work. We do go deep into the client infrastructure and understand their pain points, and then give them solution catering to their needs, rather than one size fitting all. We don't do that. And then makes, for example, a client doesn't have a big footprint in cloud, and he says my cloud is I don't host any sensitive data, so we are not going to do a thorough red teaming or assessments on that. We'll say, okay, you don't need that, so, and we'll not charge you unnecessary, and with the services we have, so we'll give you a limited set of service and charge you a limited amount of time and money. And the best part is, my boss, he comes from a background where we did an engagement for a client, and it costed us for example, out of 100 hours we thought it only we committed 50 hours, so we charged for 50 hours. We did not charge for 100 hours. So that was one of the biggest thing I like about my company.
And we know cybersecurity is certainly a high-pressure industry. It's pressure coming from boards. It's pressure coming from external parties, of course, regulators, for instance. And the teams below you, you've got a lot on your shoulders. So how do you balance that? How do you stay sort of positive? How do you ensure that you've got a strong well-being, and how do you avoid burnout, for instance?
So that comes from the passion. So you need to be in love with the cybersecurity to be on, if you have to survive in the industry, because you have to, every day is a new day in cybersecurity world. Like, there's so many stories I can share, but like the classic story is, I was hired for a role, and it was COVID times. We could not go in person, and it was like I was hired to do a job on a cloud, which I had never done, and it was all COVID, and I was a contractor, so I was supposed to work on day one, like no trainings, and I had no access. I had to log in through my own laptop to get VPN access to the system, and I made ways to find vulnerabilities without even letting me know like what is the target and things. So like you have to be passionate about it. You have to be learning always. That's the attitude you need to carry in order to make sure that your mind is balanced. Otherwise, it is overwhelming. This industry is not for everyone if you're not loving in with this. So yeah.
Sanjie, amazing stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll be able to re-engage with you and maybe talk through some further topics on one of our live events or a panel discussion going forward. But for today, on the live podcast, thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
We wish you all the best going forward.
It was a pleasure.
Take care.